It's a long game.
I want to talk a little bit about regulation before we wrap up. I had, you may know him, the biology professor, Brett Weinstein, who's been on the show, and he's a friend of mine. He made an interesting comment to me the other day. I think maybe he tweeted out, and then we discussed it a little bit, about, well, if you're taking the true libertarian approach and you're against all regulation, well, are you saying that you want no regulation over the airlines, for example, to have any safety regulations or anything like that? And we didn't have a ton of time to get into the conversation. I said, Brett, very quickly what I would say is I think airlines are in the business of getting people from one place to another, and they do all their due diligence. And if the idea of a government bureaucrat coming in to make sure that this little thing is this way, as if they have more knowledge about it than the airline people, I find that to be pretty faulty. But we sort of left the conversation there.
Yeah.
What is the right amount of regulation as a libertarian?
Oh, I'm in favor of huge amounts of regulation, and I'm not being facetious. I love regulation. I believe the best regulator is the market. It's the competitive market. It's consumers being able to spend their money as they choose, or not to spend it as they choose. It's the freedom of different producers and entrepreneurs to enter markets or leave markets as they choose. It's the competition among producers. That's where real regulation comes from. The market regulates activities. You're right about the airline instance. Airlines, for example. No one has a stronger incentive to make sure that a multi-million-dollar piece of machinery doesn't just willy-nilly fall out of the sky than the owner of that multi-million-dollar piece of machinery, namely the airlines or the company that they're renting it from. And so the competition among the airlines, the need for them to protect their investments, that is a tremendous source of regulation. And it's a very nuanced source of regulation. It gets it right, and it's not subject to political control or political manipulation. So so-called government regulation is too often actually deregulation in the worst sense. It's government relieving businesses of the need to be as responsive to consumers as they would otherwise need to be. So we call, for example, occupational licensing, and that's a form of regulation. Well, no, it's a form of deregulation. It deregulates the existing producers in the market from having to be as responsive as they otherwise would to consumers.
So, for example, this would be like you have to have a license to cut hair in California or something.
Yeah. And so if I'm a hair braider or a barber or an electrician, and if the government prevents people from entering in competition with me, that makes my life easier. I don't have to be as responsive to consumers. I can charge higher prices. I can supply less high quality services. And so I am deregulated, in fact, by that so-called regulation.
So basically you would say it's the risk you have to take to be free, right? So that, in other words, that if you're an electrician and I have somebody come into my kitchen, we had a little light thing the other day. Now, yes, the guy was licensed, I guess, because he's got to be licensed. But you're saying it's just the risk that you have to take because he doesn't want to come in here and burn my house down.
And nor do you want him to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so this is another unintended consequence of so-called government regulation, in that if people come to depend on it too much, they just assume whoever you call up and say, I need some electrical work done in my house, then, well, we live in a state where electricians are regulated, so this guy must be okay. Maybe, maybe not, but if you knew, that was up to you to check. First of all, the market supplies all these wonderful ways of verifying quality. So if anyone was free to practice being an electrician, you would have easy access. You as a consumer would have easy access to various mechanisms to rank various electricians by how.
Especially now with Yelp and all the apps. And,
absolutely, yeah. So it's a total myth to think that the government is more concerned about our welfare and our property than we are. Who's more concerned about your house than you are? Who's more concerned about your personal safety and health than you are? The government might pretend that it's more concerned, or that it somehow has deeper insight to what is best for you, but I don't buy it. I think young children, they don't know their interest as well as their parents do. But once you become an adult, the presumption must be that each of us as an adult cares for and knows our best interests much better than any third